Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Hello viewers, good morning. Well, it's a beautiful day here in the city of Osogbo, Nigeria, here in Osun State. And I'm glad to have you join us again on the Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. My name is TEMITOPE AJIJOLAOLUWA. You know what we do for you on this program is to bring you the papers, the newspaper review, and to give you insightful and, quality interview segment, and then the trends as a manual does it. Well, thank you for joining us this morning, and you know that you can always follow us on our social media pages on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Western Spring Television, on YouTube at Western Spring Television, and then you can watch us live on Star Times channel 190, the DTT platform. Well, it's good to have you, and I'm sure that you're also joining me on this countdown to the inauguration on May 29. It's just about 13 days to the inauguration, where we'll have the president-elect and his vice being sworn in, to take, the oath and take their oath of office. Well, it's good to have you again. It's a beautiful morning, like I said. Hope you can have a great day, and thank you for starting your day with us. Well, we'll be bringing you the papers immediately after this break, so stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Ahmadu Bello, a Prince Royal, was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate in the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness in participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history. This iconic African presents the narrative of a man destined to exert an imperishable global influence in Western education. His was a story of a freeborn, captured and sold into slavery. He was born in Oshogun, a native Yoruba village near Iseyin in Okeogun axis of southwest Nigeria. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was the foundation student of Fora Bay College, Sierra Leone, the foremost university where the pioneer set of native Africans were educated. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's greatest contribution to humanity was his translation of the Holy Bible into the Yoruba language. The man who authored the Yoruba dictionary was also credited with the translation of English classic hymns into Yoruba and the Ekwere languages. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's private residence in Badagry, incidentally the first story building in Nigeria, is an archival museum dedicated to the memory of Africa's first bishop. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ajayi Crowther as a watershed character in history.
Well, thanks for joining us again. Thanks for staying and keeping faith with us. Well, TD's in the house with me already. And then it's time to bring you the papers this morning.
Good morning to us all, wherever you are viewing us from. Morning Spring, I almost said Spring Delight. Yes. Morning Spring, right here from Western Spring Television. Thank you for being there. Tunde IDOWU is my name. Let's get down to the business of the morning from the dailies. Topper.
All right, the Punch newspaper this morning was starting there, and the headline says, Tinubu's inauguration, military IG warn troublemakers as court hears anti-handover case. And that's on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. So it seems there have been cases there at the court on the case, on the anti-handover and the people that are purporting trouble in the polity. And then the military and IG are warning these troublemakers. Well, the ones have been coming in ever since different talks of, stopping the inauguration on May 29th have been erupting in the country. And then we can see that we've been told severally, across board by different, analysts that May 29th cannot be stopped. That's the country will have to go ahead with the inauguration. And then whatever the tribunal, judgment is could now determine if that will be upturned or not. But as it is, May 29th stands, and I said this morning when I was opening the show, we have just about 13 days to go. Yeah,
listening to what the Inspector General of Police said yesterday, and that statement, that word itself, that it was sacrosanct and nothing can stop it, and the military to have come out to say they've come to warn subversive elements that, look, if you try nonsense, and anybody who tries nonsense with a soldier, you probably know where you end up definitely. Somebody should just kindly ask maybe our director Anibaba. The day he fell into the hands of soldiers, the outcome he knows.
I'm sure he has a lot of stories to tell.
He does have.
All right, well, that's on the inauguration, and you know, people across the nation are preparing for that day, have a new administration coming in. But we can see the pictures still on the walls of Seun Kuti there. Seun Kuti spends night in custody, police plan arraignment, and that's on page 15 of the Punch newspaper. If you could recall, yesterday we had an extensive conversation with, you know, analysts here in the house, and then we could see with the lawyer and then civil rights activist, and we were told that he has done something really bad and he's going to have to pay or dance to the music. Now he spent a night in custody.
Seriously.
And you know, the analyst was telling us that this could mean 6 months imprisonment or 500,000 naira fine or both. So now he has spent a night, and I'm sure that he is beginning to see, well, he might see and he might not see the consequence of his actions. And so, but that's about Seun Kuti and his travels there. Well, to the bottom strip of the paper on page 12, Nollywood stars mourn as Murphy Afolabi is buried.
So sad.
So he was buried
sad.
Yesterday, according to Islamic rites.
So sad.
We hope that people across the nation that have been touched by his death would be, you know, have the fortitude to bear the loss. And on page 3, the red story there, Hilda's marathon cooking smashes world record, grabs global attention. Well, I don't know why it's in red, but Hilda Basi Efyong has broken the record.
Yeah.
You know, I think she eventually did more than, she did 100 hours, I think. You know, and that's a feat that many people in the country and across have been congratulating her for. And it's indeed a win, not just for Hilda and her family, but for Nigeria and Nigerians as a whole. Putting Nigeria on the world map.
Yeah.
You know,
when Mr. President spoke with her and congratulated her rather yesterday, and that was the statement that the feat she's made has actually put Nigeria on that global map. And I'm looking at probably I will try as much as possible cook, but I won't tell you how many hours I intend to do, because the last time I did, water dried in the pot and I slept off. Wow.
Maybe you need to take some lessons from Hilda.
I will. I sure will.
All right. Well, that's on Hilda and the feat she has accomplished there. And on pages 4 and 5, gridlock again. Commuters groan on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Well, it has been, you know, really bad for people.
Absolutely.
Yes. And the commuters on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, as that place is in a deplorable state right now, and it's undergoing construction, and then it's really taking longer than people thought. And then the gridlock is just alarming, and commuters are groaning. Hope that the government can speed up the process. But I think some of the things that will be hampering, you know, the construction will be the rains, and then the fact that, you know, the place will be waterlogged and all. It's really terrible. But we hope that commuters can always find alternative routes and take this while that place is being put together. But that's at the bottom strip of the paper. Moving to just above the nameplate, pay rise, resident doctors begin warning strike Wednesday. Well, today's Tuesday, and resident doctors have planned to begin warning strike tomorrow, Wednesday, and that's according to a handy here. And the resident doctors have been agitating for, you know, pay rise and better working conditions. But it seems that all of their pleas or their agitations are not really, you know, hitting hard enough. and now they're trying to plan one strike.
Honestly, it's I really don't like this aspect. Nigeria is not exempted. Nigeria is not the only country in the world. It's currently happening in the UK, where nurses and but here we are. This is becoming unbecoming, and so many people get tired, and lives are being lost when you don't have people to attend to them in the hospital. If they have, I know they are asking for about 200% pay rise, and then the 5 years license before they get things like that. They need to. They're asking the federal government to withdraw this stuff. Seriously, if they or both parties, federal government, NAD, will sit back and think of the lives that are being put in danger at this moment in time. Seriously, they wouldn't want these guys to go on strike. But the government needs to do the needful. NAD needs to be considerate as well, so that let's balance the equation. Over 220 million Nigerians. If everybody falls ill, no, God forbid. But look, where do we go to now? You keep saying that we're traveling abroad to go take medical treatment. When our doctors are not there, what would we do?
Very right. You made a good point there. And then really, I think people that are not in power will be the ones to really suffer it. Seriously. The Nigerians, indeed, will be the ones to suffer, because some of these public office holders will just fly out and get themselves treated. But really, they should be considerate. And,
seriously.
We should have a balance. And the federal government should also listen to them and do, some of their bidding, if not all. But on page 8, U.S. announces visa ban on Nigerian poll riggers and others. U.S. announces visa ban on Nigerian poll riggers and others. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that is enough to really stop some of these, people. But I think it's a step in the right direction, at least, to have a country, say no to the entry of some poor riggers in their own country.
Seriously, what baffles me the most here, yes, everybody wants to go to the U.S., everybody wants to stay in the U.S., but the U.S. is not our home. You and I, if we're probably in the U.S., we're probably a third or fourth class citizen there. And now here they are saying they're announcing a visa ban on Nigerians, Nigerian poll riggers, others, whereby they caused electoral troubles, violence during the just concluded 2023 general elections. How many times has the United States had elections where Nigerian government will say, we will ban Americans who causes violence from entering Nigeria? They'll tell you, who cares? Who wants to come to Nigeria? But the point is, the government, from the top to the center, everywhere, I think they have put us in a state of shame.
Yes.
If a country can be saying this to us, we shouldn't be in this kind of position. In the early 80s, I remember vividly, whereby a dollar was equivalent to a naira. A naira was equivalent to a dollar. 1 naira to a dollar. But look at it. Look at what it looks like today. At the parallel market, we know what it is. The Bureau exchange, we know what this is. It saddens me. And when I saw this story last night, I was like, this is the usual United States. But here, the big mistake I feel they are making is they keep saying poll riggers. They didn't mention anybody's name.
Yeah.
Why don't we get to know that, okay, these are the set of people you are barring. Then we'll know that, yeah, truly, they deserve to be barred. But you keep saying this all the time, and it probably is swept under the carpet. Eventually, we don't see anybody, but we don't know who is being barred from coming to the U.S. Well, I don't know. Our government needs to step up its game. We shouldn't have countries of the more developed countries in the world telling us is what they do there. Why don't we replicate it up in here? We just spoke about NAD.
Yes.
Now, in the UK, Nigerian doctors are the third best in the UK today. Do we have them? Why have we allowed them go to the UK when they can do all what they are doing? Why they are being recognized in the UK? Why don't they allow them replicate these things here? And then before you know it, the UK will come, France will come, Germany will probably come and say, we're going to bar some Nigerians from there. How many?
We'll be left with no choice. We'll be forced to stay home and build our home.
If we can just put our homes right, seriously, it is absolutely good to be Nigeria if things are placed very well.
True.
Honestly.
Well, I think we're the ones who have given these people, this countries, the power to speak to us in the ways that they do. Because the first instance, we think of anywhere else except our home. When you want to go on a medical tourism, including our number one citizen is out of the country, and then he gets medical attention. But when we build our home, we build our medical facilities, we'll have good educational system running for us.
Absolutely.
And our citizens need not leave the country before they make it. But because we're always seeking greener pastures every other place, and they have our best brains. They have them there. They're not seeking to push them back home, but they want to keep them there. But the poor riggers are the ones they don't want in their country. And I mean, as they tax them, they don't want poor riggers, But, well, I don't know. But if you have also decided to make yourself into some sort of nuisance that would keep disrupting the, the good working conditions of your country, then I think you should be rewarded with things like this as well. Either way, we're not in the news for a good reason, but then when we hear things like this, maybe it will set our thinking right.
Hopefully.
And put us, on our toes. But on page 19, federal government spends 13 trillion naira on subsidy, sets removal guidelines. Well, this administration is still talking about subsidy removal and, certain removal guideline. And like we've always said, probably this administration should stop, really talking about the subsidy and the removal guidelines. I think the incoming administration should be doing much of that, because either way, they might revisit some of these things and it will be like, we're just, we're starting all over again. But that's it on the Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, thank you. Let's check out some of the headlines I have from the Guardian newspaper for this morning. Uncertainty over $2.3 billion Siemens deal as grid collapses 99th time under Buhari.
What a record.
Man, I know how it is. Electricity is one of the biggest sources of investors coming in to invest in your country, your state. If you got electricity, I remember while growing up, we had so many great companies. Bata, we had there's this Leventis. We had Michelin. We had all these great Dunlop. We had all these great companies right here in Nigeria. But where are they today? As at that period in time whereby electricity was still, at least then we were complaining, but it was far better than what it is now. At least you get
an announcement before, major repair.
Seriously. And look at it. Look at what the Guardian newspaper is saying. The grid collapses 99th time
under an administration.
No, this is scary. This is really, really scary. We just hope something worthwhile will be done, and will be done as soon as possible. All right. Still from the pages of the Guardian newspaper for today, to my right-hand side there, Buhari leaves inflation at highest in 17 years. We will be talking about that with someone who analyzed this issue of inflation in 17 years. It's come up to double digits now. Excuse me. I think it's about 22.22% now. It's really escalating. And looking at what's happening Food prices have soared up. It's on the rise daily. Virtually everything is on the rise.
Everything.
And the common man is really feeling the heat at this moment. We just hope the incoming administration
and I think somehow,
government will do something.
This administration is under some sort of scrutiny by, the Guardian newspaper. I mean, the first one, look at the second one. And most all the stories there are also about the president, the administration, and their achievements so far. Let's put it that way.
Still with the Guardian newspaper, just as we took you on that from the Punch newspaper, resident doctors declare 5-day warning strike. And just like we analyzed while we're taking it from the Punch newspaper, someone once said that is the only language government understands. Strike. And why will they wait? Why should they wait until there is a strike?
Yes.
There shouldn't be. There should be that harmony, that synergy. Sit back on a round table. Let's discuss what do you want. If we hear the humongous amount being spent at the National Assembly, the humongous amount being spent at NDDC, why are our doctors
even the
not...
most recent 651 million naira hardship allowance by the president and
vice president,
vice and the governors.
Why our doctors? Because if our doctors are not there, what will it look like for the ordinary citizen, the common man? I don't usually want to use the word, that statement, ordinary. We're not ordinary. We are good citizens, and we deserve the best. If the US, if South Africa, the UK can put so much into their health system, into their security system, we should be able to, so that nobody thinks of running out of this great country. And also, from the pages of the Guardian newspaper, US slams visa ban on Nigerians who undermined 2023 election. We're asking the US at this point in time. We are calling out to the United States at this point in time. Please name names, even though we know some of them. Nigerians saw quite a whole lot during the election. You saw some people threatening, some people troubling the masses, their citizens, electorate at that period. Who are you looking at? Who do you think? Don't go and pick up the wrong person. So I might just implicate TEMITOPE now, and you probably feel she's part of those who undermined the election. We need to know who you are talking about. We need to know that. And probably, if possibly, we can chase them out of Nigeria as well. Then probably find other countries of the world to go stay. We want a good country. We don't want issues. We don't want you to just keep saying who undermine. Who are the who? The who. We need to know. And that's the honest truth there. Moving on here. Government kicks against move to halt doctors' migration. Yeah, that's credited to what the resident doctors are saying. That look, if you want us, that license ban, 5 years license, that you will not release licenses until after 5 years internship or something like that.
Yes, right? You have to serve the country for like 5 years.
Look. It's painful. These doctors, I give it to the guys at the medical system. All these health workers, these guys are good. I know what it takes. Someone like me, I can't stand blood. If I say I don't, but they go in there day in, day out to save lives.
Talk about the years in the university. Talk about the
residency, housemanship,
and then all of it, and the money spent.
And now you're not giving them that. I don't know. Federal government, you need to really come out to tell us, tell the whole world and the doctors why you are saying 5 years before you can release licenses for them to practice. So that we, as Nigerians, we deserve to know, so that we can know who is right and who is wrong. And then let's make some noise at that moment. All right. Buhari Lawan Hilda on world record feat. The lady is just, that name is everywhere around the world at this moment in time. We say congratulations to Hilda Bassi, and it's really, really nice to be a Nigerian at this moment in time. And one of the biggest things that actually surprised me with the people who stood, they defied the rains, They defied the heat from the sun. They were there. And Nigerians, I love Nigerians.
Nigerians support Nigerians.
We've got that supportive nature.
Yes, yes.
One or two things at times, but when one of us is doing so well, you know the deal. I remember I think in 1996 during the Atlanta Olympic World Cup that was played in the US. You know the time frame. The time is different. The time frame is different from that of Nigeria. I remember we always wake up. It was always in the middle of the night to watch and to support Nigeria. Will anybody tell me to just not sleep because I cherish my sleep? There's so much work to do, and I need that good rest. But once a Nigerian or the Nigerian football team or something is doing something at any time, you will see us there supporting. So we say kudos to Hilda Bassey on this massive feat. 100 hours since 4 p.m. on Thursday last week. That's massive. That is massive. And now Nigerians are beginning, I don't know, people are beginning to say, her gas finished yesterday, that this is her bank account. Please send money to this account so that we can buy gas for her. Hey, look, people will always come up with crafty things, but it's all good. Hilda, make us proud, and you've already made us proud. And also, lastly, from the pages of Guardian newspaper, Assault Kuti apologizes, gives officer 12,000 naira for vehicle repairs. What could have been done earlier? There's that aspect of patience. Patience does a whole lot. And with patience, honestly, if you had probably looked at that and calmed down and like, wow, this happened, this is 12,000 naira, probably nobody would have heard about anybody fighting among, hitting themselves or pushing them, slapping a police officer. But Sheikh Kuti left the best for the last. Well, we just hope lessons are learned at this moment in time. Yes.
All right, quickly, let's go to check out the Face of the Nation newspaper. And the headline says, Inspector General warns subversive elements against plots to derail May 29. And the writer says political actors conspiring to stop inauguration of President-elect Tinubu governors. Well, you know, this what's bothering me about the writer is the political actors conspiring to stop inauguration. Well, if the military knows these people, why not just pick them up and stop, you know, whatever it is they've been purporting or concocting
This is where the DSS should come in. This is their job. When to protect the integrity of the country, yes, just as the military, but it's actually the work of the DSS at this moment in time. TUNDE, who is, and his collaborators are planning. I'm not planning naturally. I can't plan. Yeah, do you understand? When you hear things like this, it's just a matter of inviting them. You've been invited to the DSS office to come and explain certain things. You can come with your lawyer. Come with your lawyer. It's even the best. And then you're being asked, questioned about certain things, this and this and this. But we tend to always have media trials. This is one thing that pains me the most. We've seen advanced countries of the world, former presidents in the United States, Donald Trump, eventually he was arraigned, he was in court, and but the day he was asked to, when they actually went to his Malaga home in Florida to check, there's a process. You serve a warrant, and once that warrant is served on you and you look at it, it's from the right source, you don't have a choice. You have to give them that space. Come in, check what you need to check. Well, here we are. We keep getting media trials. Before we know it, we begin to hear DSS are after social and political job. Who are these people? Why don't we begin to have names? We've had the federal government say times with that number that we will name financiers of Boko Haram. How many names did we hear? We should stop this media trial. Let's move on and get these things right.
And we can see a quote from there. Political actors with subversive agenda and their collaborators, particularly their foot soldiers, who they are exposing to political radicalization and extremism, should henceforth jettison their ongoing premeditated attempts to create tension within the national space with intention of derailing the May 29, 2023 presidential inauguration. But I think these words are enough for whomever has been, creating or planning such a move. But just above that story, CBN decries telecoms operators, banks face off over USSD, and that is on page 25 of the Nation newspaper. And way above that, US, we've sanctioned those who undermined elections. Well, according to them now on the Nation, the way the Nation puts it, they've been sanctioned already. Well, that's on page 4. And 13 trillion naira spent on subsidy in 16 years, says federal government.
Wow.
And the rider Tinubu to get guide from Transition Council. All right. That's in preparation for the handing over. And to the bottom strip of the paper, Nigerians spend 2 billion on medical tourism yearly, says minister. Did you see that?
1.2 billion? $1.2 billion?
Yes, $1.2 billion rather.
Not even, just not in naira.
$1.2 billion dollars on medical tourism yearly, says minister.
So if $1.2 billion is put into the medical system, the health system here in Nigeria, it surely will go a long way. We'll get the best of equipment, we'll get the best of hands to man all these things. So rather than taking all these monies to the United States, to England, to Dubai, or Derba, India, if all these things are done here, if these monies are expended into our health facilities, we'll have people coming in from Australia, from Germany, here. And then it's also a means of IGR for the country, for the state in which they are coming to, because they are coming to pay. But rather, we are taking these monies out and we are boosting their own economy at the expense of over 220 million Nigerians. When we talk like this, I just hope the federal government, those in the corridors of power, will kindly listen to us. One of the major things that baffles me the most is our leaders, they travel abroad for medical treatment, for holidays, shopping. They see all these things there. And you're Mr. Governor, you're the minister. And
it doesn't bother you that you don't have that in your state. It's
painful. Honestly. We just hope they can bring all those, whatever they've seen out there, bring it here. Lagos State, looking at Lagos State, that is one state I'm always proud of. Because when you look at some of the infrastructure, some of the things being done, they're trying to at least replicate what they see outside the shores of this great nation. And they're bringing it to the Lagos State. That's why in Lagos, if you tend not to want to make a mistake. Because if you're probably coming into Agumbelewo and you miss that road, you have to go and turn somewhere around there, maybe Okini.
Very far.
Look at the BRT lane. I look at all these things. It reminds me of the London buses, whereby when you have all this, when you sit in there, you're comfortable, you're happy. I want states of this nation, Osun, Kwara, Bauchi, you'll be able to go and then look at the rail lines. Let's have all these things done. Then probably the speed at which insecurity will probably be extinguished or limited will be there. Because I got a job, you have a job. Nobody's looking out. I want to kidnap somebody.
Everyone is engaged.
Because you're engaged and you're getting pretty paid. Not the aspect whereby some people are the ones getting the money, others are languishing in poverty. Of course, it tends to take them to the point at which I must survive. And they will do anything to want to survive.
Yes. Well, just above that story, federal government approves 37 new private universities, and that's on page 4. well, the ones we have that have been approved are still agitating for better conditions. As we can see, you know, we had the disagreement between the federal government and ASU and the division that, you know, was created amongst them, the rift. But then we have 37 private universities that have been approved again by the federal government, but they're private universities.
Yeah, trust them. They're going to bill us. My son is starting his WIC today, and I'm so excited about that at least the boy is growing up. Well, looking at that, I'm thinking of a university. Of course, we pick some of the universities I intend him to go to, but obviously it's not free of charge. 37 universities, good. It's good. We need every available child out there to pass through one educational system or thereabout, the university further and things like that. That's if you and I probably didn't visit the university or the polytechnic or thereabout, we probably will not be able to be doing this now. So if we have 37 more private universities, what is the federal government doing to support all these universities? The federal government owned universities. What is the federal government doing to make sure that they've got good buildings, they've got good class? It's up to standard. Thank you. It's up to standard. So that if some of us, if we can afford the private universities, we can still go back to the federal government-owned universities, which of course it will be minimal and whatever. And all of them come out. And the major thing is once they graduate, the labor market is there. Are there jobs out there waiting for them? Remember in the early 80s when we probably graduated, it was
organizations go to the schools
and pick the best hands.
Yes.
Things like that.
Well, we hope that we can have, you know, the glory days come back for Nigeria.
Seriously.
Well, just above the nameplate, life outside power is challenging. Igbinedion Saraki tell outgoing governors. Well, that's on page 6. Well, it's an eye-opener.
Absolutely.
And, you know, a message, key message for those who are outgoing and have probably not got a senatorial ticket, you know, that have been snagged or going back into the Senate. But you should know, according to Igbinedion and Saraki, telling that life outside power is challenging.
It is. It is.
That speaks to why they always want to hold on to power, because they don't want to face the challenges. Well, I think maybe Igbinedion and Saraki should be factored into the hardship allowance, you know, thing, because they said it's challenging. You know?
One thing is this: all our past governors, president, ministers, there's an entitlement they get, I think, maybe every 4 years.
Yes.
Thereabout. Igbinedion is an ex-governor in Edo State. There are benefits that accrue to Kwara State. There are benefits. Their retirement package can feed him. I don't know. I don't want to say but obviously people like this can't languish in poverty again. They've got
of course. It's not so much about the money for them now. It's just about that power and the ability to say things, and then millions are falling, you know, at your feet, and that's it. But you know,
that's life. You just have to blend.
Transcend. It will always.
That's all.
You know,
exactly.
Leave at a point. And on page 7, assault on inspector. Detained Seun Kuti may undergo drug test. Well, more words come. Just leave it to the police, especially Nigeria police too. You know, when they want to be vindictive,
oh goodness me,
they would go all out.
Honestly. And
in this case, we really can't blame them. I mean, it was a direct assault on the Nigerian police. Honestly. Not just the man now. You know, like we were saying, Hilda brought glory not just to herself and her family, but to Nigeria. And now in Seun's case, the same thing. He assaulted the Nigeria police, and that, you know, is maybe to the Nigeria police now is unforgivable. because he has spent a night now in custody, and now he's going to undergo drug test to know if maybe perhaps he was under the influence at the time. Because, you know, rationally thinking, somebody who is really not, you know, influenced by anything, you know, would not just get down and start assaulting an officer of the law. But then that's about Shehu Kuti. The Nation has brought us more information. But on page 25, NBS puts April inflation rate at 22.22%. And we've been talking about the inflation, and like you said, that will be what we'll be dwelling on the interview segment of the show this morning. To know what Nigeria's inflation rate was in the past and what it has been under the Buhari administration, and what we might be looking at in the coming administration. It's really important to know and to really, you know, talk about our realities as a people, our reality as a people in the country. And now all the stories of the Nation newspaper have been brought to you this morning on the Morning Spring, and that's where, you know, those are the papers we have for you this morning on the show. And that's all we draw the curtain on the newspaper review this morning. We'll be coming back shortly to bring you the interview segment of the show. We'll be coming in with our guests. Please stay with us.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever expounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast, detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Ahmadu Bello, a Prince Royal, was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate in the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness in participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history. This iconic African presents the narrative of a man destined to exert an imperishable global influence in Western education. His was a story of a freeborn, captured and sold into slavery. He was born in Oshogun, a native Yoruba village near Iseyin in Okiogun axis of southwest Nigeria. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was the foundation student of Fora Bay College, Sierra Leone, the foremost university where the pioneer set of native Africans were educated. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's greatest contribution to humanity was his translation of the Holy Bible into the Yoruba language. The man who authored the Yoruba dictionary was also credited with the translation of English classic hymns into Yoruba and the Ekwere languages. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's private residence in Badagry, incidentally the first story building in Nigeria, is an archival museum dedicated to the memory of Africa's first bishop. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ajayi Crowther as a watershed character in history. The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw who struck gold in Africa, became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ad initio created imbalance in the economic political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups and the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Spring Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the Earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Western Spring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history.
Thank you for being there with us. It's still Morning Spring coming to you live from Western Spring Television on a very beautiful Tuesday morning. And we have our guests via Zoom all the way from Abuja this morning. We will be talking about the speed at which inflation is rising in Nigeria. How could this have, how could we subside this? How can we bring this down? What are the effects of inflation to the economy? Looking at the GDP ratio, it's alarming and it's very, very scary at this moment in time. I have with me the country director, the Nigeria director of Once. Yeah, he has 10 years experience in the management of development programs and policy reforms in the society and government. It's a pleasure to have Mr. Stanley Achonu joining me all the way from Abuja this morning. Mr. Stanley, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Right. Let's begin by looking at Nigeria's gross debt level has climbed from about 19.3 trillion naira as of 2015 to about 91.6 trillion naira in 2023. Where does this leave the Nigerian economy and the citizens of this great nation?
Let me start by saying that debt by itself is not exactly the challenge. It's about the cost of that debt that is the challenge that we face as a country.
Okay.
Other countries, US, UK, France, they all have very high debt costs. If you've been following the news in America, they are currently negotiating their debt limits, right? So debt is not a unique problem to Nigeria. What is unique to Nigeria is that the cost of our debt is quite high. It is consuming literally the entire government revenue, thereby limiting the ability of government to meet needs, to sort of provide basic amenities and live up to their constitutional requirement of growing the economy, supporting citizens, providing employment, providing infrastructure, schools, education, health, be able to pay salaries or living wage to our medical doctors and nurses and everybody who work in the health sector. So the Nigeria's debt by itself, owing debt is not the problem. The challenge we have is that our revenue is now being consumed by our debt servicing, which is where the challenge is. The finance minister says that debt is consuming 60% of every money that government earns, which means that we are overstretched. We borrow to repay the money we borrow. That's a really bad state to be in, and that's where the challenge comes from. And it continues to grow year on year. The numbers has continued to trend upwards, while our revenue has continued to go downwards. Our debts increased by 20% from 2014 to 2021, but while our revenue declined by 7% within the same period. So you can see that revenue is not growing, but debt is growing, and somebody has to repay that.
Now, what does the burden of debt servicing, what does this burden, what does it mean to us as a country and to the economy of Nigeria?
So, as I tried to explain, so if our revenue, now let me give this, let me give a simple example.
Okay.
If Nigeria earned ₦1 trillion,
okay,
right?
Yes.
If our total revenue from oil, non-oil, everywhere is ₦1 trillion, and the cost of servicing the money we owe, so that, and I'm using servicing, not paying back the actual money, right? So you have to pay, continue to service your loan or repay your debt. The cost of servicing our debt is maybe 90% of the total money we earn. That would be 900 billion, right? It leaves us with only 100 billion to build roads, to pay staff, school teachers, doctors, everybody. It leaves us with 100 billion to do rural infrastructure. It leaves us with 100 billion to lift people out of poverty. What can you do with 100 billion to meet all of these needs, right? So so it means that we cannot invest in productive sectors that grow the economy, because you have to put in money. For growth to happen, you have to put in money, right?
Yes.
So it limits the ability of government to take those measures that will even grow the economy for us to earn more money. Because if there's no growth, you don't earn more money. You remain stagnant. And as you can see, the numbers show that our economy is also not growing. That's because the debt burden is now so much on us that we are spending everything we have managing our debts rather than investing in productive sectors. But also the challenge is that, what are we even investing the money we are borrowing into? Others will take loans to invest in productive sectors that earn money, right?
Yes, please.
You can't raise revenue from people who are not earning money. Nigeria is literally the poverty capital of the world, right? So you cannot then be taxing the extreme poor. Where are they going to get the money to pay taxes, right? But if the economy is in good shape and that we have an increased number of people within the middle class and upper class, or we have lifted more people out of extreme poverty, those people can then pay taxes to government. Government can then raise revenue, right?
Yes,
and also remember that if somebody is not creditworthy, you don't give the person more money. If I borrowed money from you in the past and I'm struggling to pay back, if I come again to borrow money, would you gladly give me that money? No. So it's a tricky situation that we are boxing ourselves in. We have managed to get that out of this situation in the past, but we are returning back to it. When Obasanjo did all of the negotiation for debt cancellation, you can see the impact that had. Once we had that debt cancellation, it freed up resources for government to make investment, right? And we grew the economy during that period. But if you look at the numbers, the economy is trending downwards every year.
Now, let me still stay with you on this debt servicing to revenue ratio, which is actually alarming at 83.2% as of 2021 and 96.3% as of 2022. That's according to the World Bank. Where these leave the likes of recurrent expenditure, let alone investments in Nigeria?
So what has happened is that it has completely consumed government revenue. So what government did was simply break the law, and there's no better way to say it. What government just simply did to overcome this challenge was break the law. The law in question is the Central Bank Act, which allows the central bank to loan at most 5% of the total revenue that government earned in a year. They can take 5% of that as loan from CBN. That's what the law, the CBN Act Section 38 states, that the CBN can loan the federal government up to 5% of the total revenue of the federal government, right? Yeah. As to cushion deficits in the budget. But because the deficit was so much, the government simply broke the law, ignored the law, and went on a borrowing spree from CBN. CBN simply printed any amount of money that the federal government wanted. And the law also says that 5% you borrow from CBN, you must pay it back by the end of that fiscal year, right? Before you can take another one. Government wasn't paying back. Now that has amounted to 22 trillion naira. Almost 23 trillion naira that the federal government that has borrowed from CBN to cushion budget, be able to pay salaries. And this goes back to what I'm saying, that you then continue to borrow to plug other borrowing. Your revenue goes to paying those you owe, you then go to somebody else to borrow. And in doing that, the federal government simply broke the law, which is what, and it was quite expensive for government to borrow from CBN because let's not assume that because Central Bank of Nigeria is the government banker that it can get free money from Central Bank. It comes at an interest rate as well. So it's not exactly free money that you can do whatever you want with. It was not just about just printing money and handing to government, right? So it has forced us into law breaking. It has forced us into this level of disregard for constituted set norms and rules so that we can be able to survive. That's why people are not. It seems like this is news now. It has always been there. It has happened over the last 5-6 years. It has only come to a head now because the government is now asking the Senate, the National Assembly, to allow them to turn these ways and means from CBN into bonds. That's why it has become news item. 23 billion, it has always been 22 trillion. It has always appeared in the budget as extraordinary items in the budget, but nobody paid attention to it before it has not gotten to this stage. It has completely sort of taken away everything government earns, and everything goes into debt servicing.
We're looking at 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now, with the speed at which we are right now, the upcoming generation, where does this leave the economy for us as a nation in 20 years' time?
So it's a precarious situation because, and I say precarious situation is that unlike when Obasanjo was president and was able to reach an agreement and repay part of the loan because we were earning substantial oil revenue, we were able to save up enough money to reach an agreement to say, if you reduce our debt, we are willing to pay off this amount, right? And they negotiated that debt cancellation, paid certain amount, the others were forgiven, right? In this instance, we're in even a more difficult situation because we do not have that money. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Our oil revenue in 2014 from oil alone was $12 billion in 2014. In 2021, our oil revenue was $2.5 billion, right? Wow. So there is no money coming in. And what has happened to our oil revenue? It's not because oil prices are terrible. The oil price has averaged $70 a barrel in the last 1-2 years. So it has been fairly stable. What has happened is that pipeline vandalization has completely disseminated our oil supply, where the Russian war in Ukraine has led to increased revenue for oil producing countries. Nigeria's situation was the opposite. We were unable to take advantage of that war in Ukraine, like other oil producing countries, right? We didn't earn substantial amount. Our revenue did not increase, while other oil producing countries saw increase in their oil revenue because of the war that has led to increased oil prices. So there is just a lot fundamentally wrong with our ability to earn money, and we need to, and if we do not want to make the future generations prospect bleak, we need to correctively, and this is it's a good thing that a new administration is coming, they have to correctively head on tackle the challenge of our revenue, at least for something as guaranteed as oil. Our oil production levels need to go up. For that to happen, you need security in the oil-rich Niger Delta. You need to increase our ability to track our, survey our pipelines and prevent bunkering and all of those oil tapping. We have to police our waterways in order to earn revenue. And that's one assured way of earning money to plug this loophole. But more importantly, we need to create opportunities for Nigerians. Sometimes it's not just about how much we're investing, but it's also about the enabling environment for businesses to thrive. Sometimes government tend to think about raising revenue as I must tax this business to death, right? In order to earn money. No, sometimes giving tax incentive and saying you are free to operate, we are waiving this, we are waiving that. It sounds like you're giving away money. But what does that mean? That business is then able to employ more people who pay tax. So what you have forgone as maybe license fee comes back to you as pay tax because you then put more people into employment. That business is able to grow. So we have to be very creative about how we solve the problem. Otherwise, we are completely going to make the future generations prospect very bleak. Wow.
Let's come down a little bit at this point here. Nigerian political leaders have never been able to agree with each other to stick to a common set of principles, values, and policies that consistently deliver for their citizens, regardless of their ethnic group or political persuasion. Do you agree or disagree that this could have been one of the reasons why Nigeria is still lagging behind?
I totally agree. What we have is, on one side, failure of leadership, and I like to explain this as sometimes we think we don't know when politics stops and when our future is at stake, and that's the problem with our political leaders. The inability to say, look, politics is over, the future of this country is priority. That inability to agree on shared vision for what they want for this country, because it has to be like everybody must get around a vision to say, look, we must grow this economy, we must improve the welfare of ordinary citizens, and all of us work towards that goal. Be you local government chairman, be you a councillor, be you president, be you a minister, that all of us are focused on delivering goods to the majority of Nigerians is one way, and that is something that has failed. Some groups go this way because maybe political alignment or regional interest or religious interest, we push them to go one way, and that group will go in a different direction. We have not simply prioritized a single vision of what we want for this country, irrespective of political, religious, or tribal affiliation. That is one failure. That inability for our leaders to get together and say, look, poverty is a problem, let's tackle it. Unemployment is a problem, let's tackle it, right? That has really played a major role in the situation that we are in today. So I agree with the statement and the assessment.
Now, let's look at the speed at which the population of Nigeria is fast growing. Someone once said that we're about 220 million people right now. What will the economy look like if a rapid response isn't put in place in the next 10 years or thereabout for Nigerians?
If you look at when you look at the current situation of things, when you look around you and see the level of poverty that we currently have, the level of deprivation, the lack of access to basic amenities, water, schools, health facilities. You were talking about during the headline, you were talking about doctors and their demands and our inability to pay them a living wage. When you look at the situation of let me give you an example of doctors. Nigerian doctors can barely afford to buy fairly used cars, not new cars. But there was a time when if you are a doctor, you could access, you can afford, off your salary, can afford to buy a car. That tells you how bad the situation is. So if our population continues to grow at this rate, remember that government data shows that 133 million of us are already living in multidimensional poverty, right?
Yes,
we
please.
do not have access to water, we do not have access to health, we do not have access to education, we do not have access to opportunity. 133 million of us are already living in this state. If our population continues to grow at this rate and is not matched with opportunities, with development, we are going to get into squalor. And look, when people have no stake in the economy, it's very easy to convince them to destroy the country. And this is why you have also seen the rise in insecurity. It used to be restricted to one region. It is now everywhere. Every part of this country is facing one conflict or the other. The reason is simply that people do not have a stake in this economy. If somebody comes to you and say, that studio where you are operating from, that join me now, let's set it on fire. Your children's school fees will be paid from the salary you earn. Would you agree to set the studio on fire? No, because you have a stake in the continued operation of that studio, right? But if you don't have a stake, you say, oh, let's do it. And that is what is now happening to the able-bodied young people we have who do not have a stake in the Nigerian economy, are now willing tools in the hands of those who want to disrupt and destroy the country. So when we say these things, it's not just about that you should provide opportunities for young people. It's also for the safety of the country. It's also for the security of the country. It's also for the future of the country, because if the population continues to grow, alongside this growing lack of opportunities, we're only heading for disaster that will happen eventually.
Thank you for bringing up that part of the younger generation, because it's one of the questions I actually had in mind as well. Because if our youths are empowered, do you think it can be a positive means to better this nation?
So what has happened to our youth is not because they are lazy, and it's really unfair to declare Nigerian youths, to describe them in any way other than hardworking. In one sense, I feel that the country, and pardon me if I say, I feel like the country is out to put them down, right? And irrespective of the effort that the country has made to put them down, they have continued to rise, and they have continued to excel where they have managed to create opportunities for themselves. If you look at our entertainment industry, or you look at our tech industry, young people have taken hold of that sector without government intervention, right? And they have made something out of it. If people have been able to succeed without being given the opportunity, then imagine what they can do if the opportunity is presented to them. So what has happened to our young people is that is an everyday effort to try to survive, irrespective of government effort to put them down. That's the way I see it. Because I don't see sometimes most of the targeted effort by government come across as tokenism. It does not go to the heart of the problem, which is things that like invest in real education that empowers them to create the future that they want, or is the environment for doing business so that they can create opportunities for themselves. We are very entrepreneurial. Young people in Nigeria are very entrepreneurial. They just need to be given the space and support to sort of unleash the potential they have. That is completely missing in this instance, where the country is doing everything to limit the ability of young people to create opportunities for themselves, while also failing to create opportunity for the young people. So it's a really dire situation, but I completely believe that if the opportunity is given to young people, we can turn this country around. We can create employment, and it's already happening. We can create jobs for ourselves and for our peers, right? So if you do simple things like putting enabling laws in place that frees up the space for them to operate, the sky is the limit of what Nigerian youth can do. The results are there, the evidence is there. What is not there is that free environment to express themselves, to create that opportunity for themselves and for their colleagues, for their peers.
Stanley, let's look at the period when COVID-19 shook the whole world, and most of recent, the ongoing war in Ukraine at this point, which has actually pushed about 90 million more people into extreme poverty, most especially, most of them from South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. How would you describe the multiple effect of this on the country's economy of Nigeria?
Oh, yeah. In fact, in Nigeria, it pushed additional 5 million people into poverty. It was really a disruptive period, especially the COVID that shut down the world, shut down the entire world. I'll give you an example of how dire that's implication, because sometimes we don't understand the impact of of COVID shutdown. Majority of Nigerians live every day off the money they earn. They don't have salaries that can carry them through the month. So they wake up every morning and work for that day's meal, right? So when we shut down the country, their ability to earn that day's meal was completely taken away. And you see them, maybe you're not paying attention or we're not paying attention, but you see them every day. There are those guys who are hawking in traffic. Is the roadside food seller, is the market woman. Most of those people do not have money that can feed them for 3 days. It's off that day's sales that they are able to feed themselves and their families, right? You then shut down markets, you then restrict movement. And I'm not against all of these measures to keep us safe. What was missing was that we provided no cushion. And even when we attempted, the Nigerian factor setting into hoarding of palliative that would have provided food and all of that to them. But what has happened is that in the long term, we're now seeing the impact of that lockdown. That's almost 9 months period where everybody was locked in, or they were restricted movement and our ability to do anything. What we have seen is that the impact is now showing up in our economic data. Because recovery has been slow, especially for countries like Nigeria and low-income countries. Recovery has been slow. We didn't have the resources that America deployed or UK deployed to support small businesses with payroll support and all of that. We didn't have that because the resources doesn't exist. So there is an uneven balance. It then worsened by Ukraine war. When you talk about the Russian war in Ukraine and somebody says, "Wait to consign us with what is happening in faraway Ukraine," food prices drastically increased because Ukraine is one major supplier of wheat. You probably don't consume wheat directly, but there are all sorts of food that you eat that contains things that are made from wheat. So people did not make the direct connection immediately, but it has direct impact on everything, both the COVID and the war. What we failed to do was to, and this is something I've wondered about, how Africa has, how we are organized here on the continent. We have failed to utilize the multilateral institutions that exist that would have provided that support. The World Bank, the IMF did not. This is the reason the institutions were set up to support global economy in times like this. What African leaders failed to do was to make a strong enough argument for a Marshall Plan that would have helped Africa recover at the same pace as the other developed countries, because we have been left behind. America is back in shape. UK is almost getting back in form, but we have not even started making the movement to recover. So our economy will continue to feel this impact because we need external support. I know that there is a lot that we can do internally, but we need external support. The global economy needs to rally around low-income countries, especially like Nigeria, and we need to make the case. What we didn't do was make the case for why the world should rally around in supporting us. We made a very good case with vaccine and all of the shout about make vaccines available. We should have also be in equal measure talking about global economy as we were talking about vaccine. So I guess at that time health was top of the issue and everybody focused on that. But here in Nigeria, I think that there are a few things the new government can do to help grow the economy. For one, we need to reorder government expenditure, and I see there's already an ongoing conversation around fuel subsidy. We need to curtail our spending, and I make the argument that subsidy does not benefit the poor. It benefits you, it benefits me, it benefits the elite and the middle class. It does not benefit the extreme poor. No matter how we assume that, it will lead to increased cost of food. The food that we eat is already transported on diesel, which is already a deregulated item. Nobody talks about the price of diesel anymore. It goes up, it comes down, but the country is still functioning. We can get to that with fuel. There was one time when it was an issue, but we have overcome that and everything has moved on. So we need to make that difficult decision to end fuel subsidy in order to free up government resources. In freeing up that resources, I think that the government should then focus on rural investment. We need to expand what goes on in our rural areas. We need to create opportunities in our rural areas. We need to invest in labor-intensive sectors like agriculture as well. So there are a few things government can do in the immediate to tackle the challenge and sort of kickstart the economy. We need to invest in our youth and create opportunities for them to grow their own businesses as well. So there are a few things that the new government can do to tackle this challenge. But yes, COVID and the war in Ukraine really did us a number.
Stanley, let's look at the digital economy, which is the in thing these days, whereby it's always an opportunity to create jobs and also create wealth for people. What's the challenge with the Nigerian government from all fronts that they have not totally bought into digital economy? Probably with that, the spate of inflation at which our inflation is probably will come down to an extent.
So to be fair to the government, they may be a little late, but there has been some steps now to remedy their slow support for the digital economy sector. The government has passed the Nigeria Startup Act, which also includes setting up a seed funding that the government can now invest in Nigerian startups. They also by themselves, government is now also mobilizing additional investment from foreign investors into this fund that can then go to Startup Act. So to be fair to the government, there's now an effort to tackle the challenge. A bit slow, but that the sector holds promise. There is that chance for us and huge foreign exchange from the digital economy. There's one example I like to give. A lot of the global call center business is handled in India. If you need call center service support from a company, a global company, say Microsoft or any of these global organizations or global banks, that call is taken from someone in India, right? So these companies operate in the US, in the UK, in the developed economies, but support services have not been outsourced to India. So there is a huge economy on just call center, right? That is earning India huge foreign reserve. Our English is not as bad as it's better than the English spoken by Indians with their accent. So that's one opportunity we can say, look, why are we not attracting call center jobs? You can employ hundreds of thousands of people as is done in India, right? There are, companies, the world has become a small global village where people can live in Nigeria and work for companies in Germany, in Australia, remotely. And are earning money in dollars. That can be a huge source. So that it's not even just that people are living in the country. You can create that skill and training that can enable people to be developers, be support service staff, and do all sorts of jobs online. The world is now simpler and smaller, that we need to skill up our young people to be able to be huge foreign earners. They are earning in dollars and the money is credited into their dollar accounts here in Nigeria. That is a huge inflow that we are refusing to take a look at to say, look, how do we then put more people into this space? Our tech developers are sought after in places like Germany. I have friends who who work in Germany, and they say that their companies are always looking for talents from Nigeria. That's because we are hardworking when we have the opportunities to work. So I think that things like what we have done with the tech startup, which also includes that government should invest in hubs across the regions to train, to create job opportunities for young people. We need to accelerate those. We shouldn't leave these laws on paper. We need to quickly get into it in order to sort of formalize our ability to earn money from the digital economy. It holds promise. It holds huge forest earning potential for the country. But the government needs to move quicker. We also need to formalize the processes that train the right skill. Our educational institutions are not training that skill for that digital jobs yet. We need to reorder our training curriculum so that we can build the skill that the young people need to contribute to the digital economy. What we have at the moment is sort of like makeshift. Site one computer training center in one random school. No, we need a holistic overhaul of our IT curriculum in our universities. That's so that somebody comes out of the university ready for that without having to go and do additional skilling up. Why are we not building that skills directly in the university so that they can go from graduation to employment? That's a direct tackling of the challenge. Any of this other build a hub there, set up a training institute here is a makeshift attempt to solve the problem. Let's get to our university curriculum. We can rebuild our IT curriculum and computer science curriculum to meet the needs of the world immediately. And that's one way to grow our digital economy opportunities.
Now, Stanley, when the price index is not properly controlled, what effect is it going to have in the country's economy?
Of course, inflation, it will limit. Some people are able to afford, and others are completely shut out of the system. And it's that growing divide between those who have and those who do not. The inflation rate that we are seeing, as government just announced, almost 22%, and it has remained a continuous, there's been a continuous upward trend for the past few years. What that is doing is fueling the extreme poverty we have. It's pricing people out of ability to afford food. Food prices are going up. Medical costs is also going up. We have some of the highest cost of out-of-pocket spending for health. We do not have health insurance. Cost of education for those who are using private education is also growing. So we are literally pricing people out of the economy. We are also pricing them out of ability to access goods and services. And these changes will have lasting impact because value of our currency is changing. Prices have gone up. It's a difficult situation that needs a concerted effort to tackle, and it will start from making tough choices in the immediate, but it will also be about making and deciding on what will form appropriate investment. Can we produce more food? Yes, we can. We have some of the most fertile arable land. Do we have the right policies that encourage people to invest in agriculture? No, we don't. So there's just a lot we can do differently, to get us out of this, sort of to rebalance our pricing mechanism and not in order to allow everyone access the economy as well.
All right, Stanley, while Nigeria sits inactive, countries like South Africa, Ghana, Senegal, Rwanda, they are attracting businesses to diversify the supply chain. Sectors such as the pharmaceutical companies, semiconductors, where Nigeria is totally not so active. In the future, where will this place the country?
We will perpetually be playing catch-up. We're supposed to be leading, but we'll be playing catch-up. But there are reasons why Nigeria is not the destination for these businesses. We have poor infrastructure. Electricity will play a key role if you are going to attract industries. A business coming to set up in Nigeria cannot take for granted the need to invest in power. If that business is going to a place like Ghana, they do not have to worry so much about that. They're going somewhere, except now that South Africa is declining. But South Africa used to have steady power supply. Now they have all these power cuts because of decaying infrastructure. Rwanda is making progress in sort of being a stabilized economy and investing in electricity. Places like Egypt have more than tripled the amount of power supply available to industries and citizens. All of this, so this basic infrastructure, because sometimes we don't make that connection. It's not for once that a company like the pharmaceutical business, you want to cite your factory where there is market, not where you have to produce and then ship somewhere, thereby increasing the cost. So if there is a market, Nigeria is the market, right? Ghana and all of these other countries are a small portion when you compare to the size of Nigeria. But Nigeria is not the destination because the infrastructure is not there. But also not just that the infrastructure is not there, the potential to put the infrastructure there doesn't exist. If I'm a business and I look at Nigeria and say, okay, Nigeria is on track to having steady power supply in the next 3 years. Okay, I can factor in cost of energy for the first 3 years, and after 3 years, when power is stable, I can sort of net out this expense. I will be able to say, okay, let me take the risk. But there is no risk to be taken with Nigeria in terms of our ability to even be ready for these businesses in 3 years or in 5 years, right? So it's not just that our leaders are not doing enough to market or do road shows to attract these businesses to Nigeria. It's just that the factors are there, because you can't come and tell me, oh, Stanley, come to Osun State, there is constant power supply, there is good roads, there is free schools and all of that. All I need to do is get on the internet and Google all of this information you have given. I can find out that you're lying. So it's not for once that this countries, we saw the debates, even for tech companies, we saw the debate about where to locate their regional offices on the continent. They're going everywhere else except Nigeria, except for people like Facebook and Microsoft that sort of took that risk and came here. Others are looking elsewhere. But Nigeria should be, and in real sense, Nigeria is the tech capital of the continent, right? All of the talents in tech exist here. So why is this not the place where every tech businesses that think, oh, I'm heading to Africa, you should think Nigeria first? But the environment is not right for these businesses to go to. So that's why all of these companies, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, tech companies, are going to Ghana, South Africa, Rwanda, and are leaving Nigeria out. The supposed giant of Africa. Political statements will not make them change their mind. Arguments will not make them change their mind. The economic situation is the only thing that can change their mind. Concrete, actionable plans that is being implemented aggressively can only change their mind. No other thing can change their mind. The facts are there and they see it. These people are businesses. Nobody wants to put their money in a very risky environment. And Nigeria poses that risk to their investment, and they're going elsewhere.
Tony, I'll allow you go at this moment in time, but I have this last question here. What are the control measures that can be put in place to put Nigeria's economy back on track in the world economy?
There are difficult decisions that the government needs to make. So first of all, we need to show leadership. We need to market ourselves on the global scene. We need to speak well of ourselves. And when I say we need to, this is the job that the new president's team, the finance minister, the trade and investment, whoever they are, need to be aggressive in speaking confidently about the opportunity that exists. And the last time we saw that level of confidence and marketing was when Obasanjo was president, where we went out to the world and said Nigeria is the place to go to. And Nigerians responded and the world followed, right? So we need to be aggressive in marketing Nigeria as a destination. But we need to match that with policy, because that was one of the things that happened under Obasanjo. The changes, the reforms were real, and these investors could see it. They saw it in our banking, they saw it in our telecoms, they saw it in our pension, they saw real our privatization program. So they saw real seriousness from the government side to tackle this challenge. But we also need to then invest in the right areas, right? Internally, we need to raise the financing, We need to invest in infrastructure like electricity. We need to improve our security. So there are a couple of things we need to do in the immediate that can get us, get the world to look towards us as a serious destination again.
It's a pleasure speaking with you, Stanley Achonu, all the way from Abuja, Nigeria, the country director of One Nigeria. Thank you so much for being a part of us on Morning Spring right here on Western Spring Television. Thank
you so much. Glad to be here.
And that's the way it looks like. We just hope things can be placed properly and on track so that Nigeria can enjoy the dividends of what we have up in here. It's been a massive pleasure being with you on the morning belt of the program, of our transmission of programs from Western Spring Television this beautiful day. On behalf of the entire transmission team, let's say thank you for keeping it real. Sport is next right here. TUNDE IDOWU is my name, and on behalf of my co-anchor, TEMITOPE AJIJOLAOLUWA, we say have a wonderful day.